I'm going to be painting a poppy and I'm going to be using just 3 colours. So shall we get started? This is Pyrrole red, but you could use cadmium red, Winsor red, any red will do. And I'm just mixing up a puddle of this using my size 10 brush, but you could use a smaller brush as well. And I'm also going to add a little bit of the Hansa yellow light just to get an orangey colour paint as well. What I'm doing now is I'm using my size 10 brush and I'm just wetting the paper. Now I'm dropping in the red paint, and remember the dilute paint gets diluted again because the paper is wet, so your colours get lighter. So this is all wet in wet, and what wet in wet does is you can see there the paint really moves and spreads. And what I want in a way, because I'm dropping it in here and there, is if you look at the poppy, it's got sort of dark and light tones, and I just want to capture that even at this very early stage. And this is one of the beautiful characteristics of watercolour, and I'm just going to continue on dropping in this paint. I'm just getting a little bit more of the Hansa yellow light. You could use cadmium yellow, just dropping it into this area of the larger petals just to give that little hint of warmth. And now I'm actually using slightly thicker colour, slightly creamier, just because I want to create a nice dark edge, and I'm using my size 2 brush. I don't want this paint to travel too much. As you can see, it kind of stays there. So you've got this lovely sort of crisp dark edge just to really sort of give it a nice outline. And when it's dried, that outline edge of the petal will have a nice crisp hard edge, very characteristic of watercolour painting. I'm still applying paint to damp paper because we're not really mixing colours here. I'm just really using red paint, just thicker, and as you can see there, it creates more dark tones but with soft edges, and working damp into damp, literally putting lines down there. As you can see, the paint sort of sits up a little bit. Because it's damp onto damp, it doesn't move and it doesn't travel too quickly. Once you finish painting your damp into damp marks, you can scratch into the damp paper with a plastic card. I'm using the very sharp point of this. Any plastic card will do, but what it does, it makes permanent marks in your watercolour paper, and the paint goes through those crevices and makes lovely thin lines. If you're not comfortable with this, you can let your painting dry and use a very small thin brush and paint red, very thin lines, wet on dry. So once you've finished scratching out your marks, you can wet your stem. I'm just wetting it with clean water with my size 6 brush. And what I want to do is just drop in some light green paint that I've mixed up here with the yellow, with a touch of the phthalo blue, and just let it run down. So I've put it at the top and just the paint just moves down to the bottom of the stem. So I'm just going to wet the seed head now with my size 6 brush, just very carefully, just the bottom part, not the top, and then just the stem as well, just putting the water all the way down, letting it soak in, and then again getting some of that light green paint and just dropping it in wet, and just see what happens. It's lovely light colour. I'm working light to dark, and I like to put my first washes on wet in wet so you get all those lovely soft edges. What I'm doing now is I'm just mixing up a little bit more of the blue into the green or the yellow, and I'm just dropping this sort of slightly darker bluey shade wet into wet on the sort of shading side on the right hand side, and underneath the seed head here, the top of the seed head where it's got a little bit of cast shadow. So just dropping that in very gently, wet in wet. And I'm now using the tip of my card and I'm just pulling out that paint, so you've got all those lovely little spiky bits coming out of the edge of the stems there. And I'm just putting a little bit of dark now on the seed head and doing the same thing, just pulling that wet paint out so you get those lovely thin lines. I'm now mixing up some green and a little bit of the red to create sort of a more of a neutral colour, adding a little bit of water to that so it's almost like a light brown, and just a touch more blue so it really neutralises it, so it's just sort of like almost a putty sort of colour, like a really neutral grey. Just painting this on the top of the seed head just to give a little bit of colour, but try to keep it as light as possible, so have it really watered down. I just added a touch more blue to that. I felt it was too warm, so it's got to be this really neutral grey colour, and I'm just going to soften that now and just sort of keep the light on the top as well. I've allowed my painting to dry naturally because I wanted the water and the paint to do some magical stuff. And if you look there, there's some backgrounds and things like that, and I thought that would be great for the poppy. What I'm doing now is I'm using my size 6 brush and I'm painting wet on dry, just using the Pyrrole red, slightly thicker, but you still want it watery enough that it's going to move. You saw what I did there. I rinsed my brush, took the excess water on the kitchen towel, and now I'm just softening and blending that colour that I put on this area. Because if you look at the reference photograph, there's a bit of shadow there. So I'm actually diluting and softening the bottom bit of that petal so it looks like the light's caught it, and the top bit it's darker. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start putting on paint, wet on dry, and then softening and blending with my size 6 brush, using clean water to blend. And you get a lovely soft edge there and a subtle shadow colour that you get in the poppies. Remember, we're building up tonal values light to dark, so this is our next tonal range. Remember also to keep those light areas, so don't put all of this colour all over because you'll lose your light. So really, as you can see what I'm doing there, that top bit of the poppy, I'm just using water to blend so I can still keep the light on that petal. It's only when it goes down to meet another petal it gets darker. As this area is damp, I'm just painting a few darker marks there for the creases on the poppy with my size 6 brush, with the paint that's slightly thicker or creamier, not too creamy that it loses the light. So when you paint on watercolour and you see it's quite dense, just be careful, dilute it a little bit, because when you lose the light, your painting can look very dull and very flat. So I'm just using the same technique here, painting on the marks for the creases on the poppy, on the petals, and diluting my brush, taking the excess water off on the kitchen towel, and then just softening and blending those edges, especially if it's wet on dry, just to soften so they don't sort of leap up at you. I love the way of painting light to dark in watercolour, soft edges, damp into damp, let that dry, and then sort of put these marks on and then just soften the edges, but they're a little bit more pronounced. And then on the last stages, you paint wet on dry and don't soften edges, so you're just getting those real sharper details and definitions. And that's the way I kind of envisage when I'm working at my way in watercolour. I just try to think about those techniques and how they work in the sort of the progress of the painting. So it's just here, as you can see, I repeat these sort of techniques over and over just to get these, you know, sort of dark, soft marks, the details. It's great practice, this. And what's great about it is you're only using one colour, because if you use a blue or something like that to darken a red, the red can look very sort of almost dirty. It's muddy looking. So if I was to darken a red, I'd use another pink, a dark pink like alizarin crimson or a magenta, maybe a violet, but certainly not a blue. It gets a bit muddy for my taste anyway. So as you can see here, bringing out that right hand petal, I put a dark around it and then soften, and look how it lifts it. It kind of makes it look 3D. And I'm doing the same on the bottom part here, painting around. It's like a negative shape. So I'm putting the dark to the right hand side, wet on dry with my size 6 brush. And then you can see the petal in the front there sort of coming forward, and that's how you kind of create that sort of 3D look. So I'm just sort of softening again with my damp brush, and then just at the top there putting in some stronger marks as well, really trying to look at the photograph and, you know, sort of not copy it, but to give an impression. So I've finished off putting those darks and I've let the painting dry, and I'm just mixing up now a little bit more blue in that yellow, painting the stem wet on dry with my size 6 brush on the right hand side because the light's coming from the left. Again, I've diluted my brush so it's nice and clean but damp because I've taken the excess off on the tissue, and then just blend. Look at me blending there, just blend that edge. You've got a soft edge because obviously a stem is rounded, so you don't have any sharp edges, so you just want to soften that so that the left hand side then is the original colour, that's the underpainting. So you're blending out to that. I mean, it's quite fiddly to do, so just make sure that you've got the brush that suits you. Just mixing up that neutral colour again. Remember the green with a touch of red and a touch of blue. I've just made it a little bit stronger just to put those little darker marks in on that little poppy seed head there, just for a little bit of shadow colour. And I'm now going to drop in a little bit more blue just underneath. This area is wet just because I wanted to, because I thought it looked good. That blue is so beautiful, and I'm just putting this now damp into damp on the right hand side of the edges of the stems as well, just to build up that tonal value. And I'm using my plastic card again, my trusty plastic card, and just pulling out some of those slightly darker marks, so you've got a little bit of contrast there as well, and it's good fun to do. I've let my painting dry thoroughly, and because we're using 3 primary colours, you can get so much colour variation. So I'm mixing up another sort of neutral colour, so it's kind of like a yellowy green. So I've had a little bit of a yellow and a tiny touch of the blue and a tiny touch of the red, and I'm just painting this in the centre of the poppy with my size 6 brush. You can see that I've just mixed up quite a dark colour, and it's the red with the phthalo blue, and I'm painting this wet on dry, making all these little small marks here, just trying to vary them. I'm rinsing off my brush now, taking off the excess off the kitchen towel, and I just want to soften and lighten the top part of those marks so that it looks like the light hitting them a little bit. It's just a little bit of detail. You could, if you wanted to, use some white paint at the end to create a little bit more light here, or at the beginning of the painting you could actually use masking fluid. I kind of wanted to avoid masking fluid on this and just get down to just some painting just with 3 colours. So I'm just sort of giving a little bit more detail, building up with my size 6 brush with this mixture of the blue and the red. I've just mixed up more of a puddle of colour because I'm actually painting a little bit of a small wash around this centre, really to pop it out. If you look at the reference photograph, it's quite light in the centre, so I'm using a bit of a dark wash to enable me to do this. I'm painting very carefully around this sort of top petal, the very light petal, so it really pushes that forward and it looks like this is inside the flower by creating this dark. Again, I'm diluting my brush, softening this center part here, just putting a little bit more shadow in there using these darks. Just take your time with this. It's quite an important area, so you don't want to be sort of slapping it on too quickly. Even I am not doing that, which makes a change, but I'm just softening here just to really bring out this center very gently, very slowly, just really taking my time. I've dried off my poppy again, and I'm just putting some marks now on the petals. So as you can see, I've been working light to darks and details towards the end, so I'm just painting those very gently onto the surface of the petals. And now I'm just building up a little bit of dark now in these sort of center petals here, just to really kind of make the poppy look more 3D by using shadows like this. So I'm just continuing just to put this red on, wet on dry, and I'm really trying to cut into that top part so it's a real light against dark. This is what you're looking for here. And I'm just rinsing my brush, taking the excess off again on the kitchen towel, and then just softening that edge, just right out to the edge of the poppy there. You can see I'm continuing on building up these shadows, and I'm just softening again with some water. I've actually just not taken it off the tissue here. I'm actually just using the water really to get lots of water in there. But actually I've reawakened a little bit of the centre. It wasn't quite dry, so it's running a little bit, that blue and red mixed together. It's a little bit muddy there, so I'm keeping my eye on it to see what's going to happen. But these things happen in watercolour, you know, we don't plan for them, sometimes things happen. So I'm continuing on putting these marks on and softening with my brush, and as you can see, the poppy's starting to look 3D. As at this point of the painting I always get a little bit excited and happy sort of thing, so I think, oh, it's working. And it's just really nice because we're really only using one colour to do this, you know, for the actual poppy itself, for the petals. So I'm just carefully painting around here, around that edge there, putting a really sort of nice strong red, and again diluting out. Looking at my painting, thinking I've lost a little bit of light there, so I'm using my kitchen towel just to pull off just the top part of the petal, because sometimes the paint runs up too much. So I'm just lifting it off, and that centre bit where I felt there was a little bit of bluey red running up into my nice petals. So I'm just dabbing off to get my light back. So remember, really assess that before your painting dries, because you've got an opportunity to get your light back. So I'm just softening now, wetting this front petal, because I want to put a little bit of sort of dark just underneath that. But again, my centre isn't dry, and I should have probably given it a better blow dry. I thought I had, but not to worry. I've taken it off with the tissue, and I'm just painting a little bit of dark. Now, if you look at the reference photograph, there's a little bit of shadow under that petal, and I'm just softening again, so it just works quite nicely. It kind of makes it look like it's curved. And because I felt I was losing my light a little bit, I'm just going to use my kitchen towel again, or your tissue, and just lift off so you get your light back. That's the important thing about watercolour. It's about our light, so it's being aware of it all the time. So I'm just putting a little bit of a warmer orangey red in there as well, just because I thought it'd look quite nice, and just give it a little bit of warmth just tucked in there beneath. And I'm just going to soften and wet this front petal here, because I wanted to sort of deepen the colour. Remember to very gently paint this, you don't want to disturb the paint underneath. And I'm going to drop in some red here just on top. You won't lose your marks because they're there, not permanent, but as long as you don't move them, those marks will remain, but the colour of the poppy will deepen, and it will be a little bit more tonal value. I'm just putting a little bit more dark now on the seed head using my size 6 brush, wet on dry. That's the blue with a touch of red with a touch of yellow, just to create some stronger darks and details. I'm just sort of rinsing my brush there, took the excess water off on my kitchen towel, and I'm just softening those marks. And I thought I'd just put a little bit more detail on here. It's because obviously you've got this amazing poppy, it needs to be balanced by this seed head here. So I'm just putting a touch more darks and details, some ridges here with my size 6 brush with that lovely neutral colour. And I'm putting a touch more sort of a bit of tonal value just down the right hand side. It's amazing with watercolour. I thought this was dark enough before. It's dried, and it always dries that little bit paler. So I just want to give that a little bit more oomph with the blue and yellow, just to soften again with my damp brush. I want to put a few more darks and details in the centre here, really to draw the eye in. I'm using my size 6 brush, it's dried off here, and I'm using the blue and the red. I've just noticed I'm getting a few runs in this area here. It's a bit problematic. Should have made sure my painting was dry before, but I just want to soften that because I'm getting a back run there where I don't want one. So before it dries off, which is harder to get off, I'm just wetting it and daubing out all of that excess moisture. So hopefully it won't come back to revisit me. I'm now painting wet on dry. I have blow dried my painting now using my size 2 brush, and painting these sort of dark little creases and sort of veins in the poppy on the petals, just here and there. Try to be sort of asymmetric, don't have everything looking the same like a pattern. Try to vary your marks. I just want to bring out this petal here. I felt it sort of sunk back in, so I'm just putting a little bit more dark here and then softening with my small brush there. It's amazing when you start putting these darks and details in how the poppy comes to life. Another little tip here is try to paint these marks in the direction of the petal, the marks in the petal. So check your reference photograph and see the directional lines, these marks I'm making. As you can see here, they're a little bit of a diagonal, so just check it's in the right direction, otherwise it can look a bit odd. And I'm just deepening some colours and little marks here and there as I go. I thought it'd be a nice idea actually just to put a little bit of red, actually some red marks in the centre, because it looked a little bit, I don't know, it just needed it. So I've actually just put some pure red right in the centre to give it, pop it out a little bit. Now this is my favourite bit, but because I didn't want to get any spattering on my poppy, I've just masked it out with some kitchen towel, made a hole in it. I'm just spattering some of that red and blue mixed together, and now I'm spattering some of the red just straight on the poppy. You don't have to do this, but I love doing it, and it actually stops me from fiddling, and it gives it a little bit of texture and life and sparkle. So I really hope you enjoy this tutorial. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section below. And if you'd like to learn more about watercolour and get access to my exclusive videos, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? Details about the membership can be found in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.